In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Now get set again.
And welcome. This is the Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action. I'm George Landreth, and I'm here with my co-host, Rick Trader. We're coming to you live this afternoon. I'm at the Frontiers of Freedom offices in Washington, D.C., and my co-host is handling the broadcasting responsibilities from our flagship station, WNJC in Philadelphia, 1360 on your AM dial, and of course, around the globe on the internet at WNJCradio.com, and a host of other things such as CPR Radio, CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio. There are more than, it looks like a dozen ways you can be listening in, and we'll update you on other ways as well. Rick, how you doing? It's been an interesting week, don't you think?
George, it's always interesting. I'm telling you, what a time we live in.
Yeah, that's true.
What a time we live.
Imagine the world when they used to print papers, like once or twice a week.
That's true. Today we had the internet. When I was a kid, we had 3 television stations to watch. It was a big deal when we got a PBS station. We thought, oh boy, number 4, but there was not much on PBS during those days. But today we have the internet, we've got 500 stations, we've got satellite radio, talk radio. It's a very interesting time to live in, and Is that because of the people in it, or these things have always been going on, but George, we just didn't have the outlets to find out about it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Chances are the same amount of stuff was happening back then, but we just didn't know it.
Yes.
And I think there's some truth to that if you think about it. You know, you watch the news today and we see all these car scene chases, or we see stories of missing children, and we think, oh my gosh, this stuff didn't used to happen. The reality is it did used to happen. We just didn't used to hear about it because it wasn't in a 24-hour news cycle. It didn't make the cut back then because you had an hour or two of news on your typical network television, and now you have all these 24/7 news outlets that have to fill that time with something, so car chases make the cut. And it's not that a missing child is not important, but a missing child in Albuquerque, New Mexico isn't necessarily front page news in New York City or Washington, D.C., but when you have an all-day 24-hour broadcasting facility, of course it becomes that. And then it gives the public the impression that there's this outbreak of car chases or missing children and so forth, and the reality is some of these things aren't that way. But so it is interesting to see the changes. One thing that I think will be interesting, tonight is another debate.
Yes.
I expect this one will be better than the last one. It's not necessarily that some would say, well, that's because it's at Fox Business Channel. Well, that's certainly part of it. But the reality is I wouldn't care if it was being held at MSNBC. I just can't imagine a debate that was more of a travesty and a joke than the last one. And so it has to bounce up from there. But the reality is I do think they have some pretty credible people that are serious-minded. We'll get into economic issues. They've made the rules such that, for example, 90 seconds for responses, which I think will let the candidates get a little bit more into what they think should be done as opposed to giving a 30-second soundbite answer that doesn't give you much. And so we'll see. I mean, I can't predict like last time. Last time I knew it would be a train wreck. I expect this time it'll be a reasonably good debate, but we'll see. Only time will tell, but we'll have something to talk about next week and give people a sense of what happened and what it all meant. But what I think is interesting is how incredibly dishonest the mainstream media has at some point you'd think, hey, we're on to you guys, and they would eventually stop because they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. If the police know you're a bank robber and they've got some guy tailing you from the FBI, I bet you most people stop doing the thing that's getting them in trouble, at least for a while, so the coast is clear. These guys will not stop. They are absolutely and completely, fundamentally to their core, dishonest and disingenuous. And I think the evidence of that came out when, we'll talk about Ben Carson. To our listeners, the reality is I'm glad Ben Carson's in the race. I think he's a good guy. I don't know that he's my guy, though, so I'm not necessarily upset with the treatment he's getting because the media is attacking my guy. I'm upset with the treatment he's getting because they're attacking a conservative, and they're doing so unfairly, and they're lying to do it. So with that in mind, recognize that it doesn't matter whether it's Ben Carson or Rubio or Trump or Bush, or you name your candidate, whoever it is someone may like. Your candidate will receive this treatment when the media gets around to it, because that's how they are. And so for those who are kind of, say, oh, I don't care about that guy, care about the issue, because it's important. It explains. You had a guy that worked for, I believe it was Newsweek, who he was the main editor for Newsweek. And he one time said that he thought the media's bias, and he admitted there was a bias, redounded to the benefit of Democrats and liberals to the tune of 5 to 12 points, if I recall.
That's
okay. Well, that's stunning. If that's true, and he later backed off until maybe it's only 5 to 10. He lowered the top end a bit, but still, imagine if in the last several elections you flipped 5% of the vote from one side to the other.
5% is just about a landslide anymore, George, isn't it?
Yeah, it changes the results.
You sure
Most
does.
of our recent elections, it changes the results. So, to me, he admitted that they get out there and affirmatively change the results. So let's talk about how they've been trying to do that here.
Well, George, if I could just interject, You know, the attack on Ben Carson, in my opinion, was very predictable, and I'll tell you why. Because there are some polls now that showed Ben Carson in lead, and that's what the media does. They attack whoever the Republican frontrunner is until they get around to picking our candidate. And this is why we got people like Bob Dole, John McCain, Mitt Romney. Because if you remember, 12 years ago, 8 years ago, 4 years ago, whoever the front-running Republican candidate was, the mainstream media went on the attack against them. And when that person dropped off and someone else rose to the top, then they would attack the new person. This is what they're doing here. Look at the attacks you saw on Donald Trump. Well, it got to be a freak show. It was really funny. Trump held it well. Now Trump's falling back in the polls a little bit. Ben Carson is rising to the top in some of the polls. So what do you get? You get the attacks on Ben Carson now. Same thing will happen. If Ben Carson drops, you watch. The next person that comes to the top will be attacked by the mainstream media, just like they have attacked Donald Trump, just like they attacked Ben Carson. They tried to pick our candidates every time, and a lot of times they're successful, and that's why Republicans lose.
Absolutely. Well, and if Mother Teresa were the nominee,
hey, there you go,
they would attack her, and they would vilify her as an uncaring, mean-spirited, elitist, awful human being.
You know, George, I'm not calling Ben Carson a Mother Teresa by any means. He's not my pick either. But what I'm getting at is, I think that Ben Carson is as close to a Mother Teresa as I've seen in politics in a long time.
Right.
He's smart. He's a lifesaver. He's got so many things going for him, and yet the mainstream media are still going after him.
Right. And my point of bringing up Mother Teresa was just to point out that it.
All right. I thought it was a great point.
I mean, you look at someone like Mitt Romney, who had lots of faults.
Yeah.
He actually wasn't a mean man. One of his problems on some level was he probably wasn't mean enough, if you will, in the campaign. He was a little too gentlemanly, a little too mild-mannered, and he gets in a debate, and Candy Crowley tells him he's wrong, and he doesn't want to be disrespectful. It's national television, and so he's like, well, all this stuff. He should have fired back. But the bottom line is they made him out to be a guy who effectively killed some man's wife because he didn't care about them. This is the sort of stuff the left will do. So it doesn't really matter what the truth is. They're going to come at you, and they're going to tell you they're awful human beings. So let's look at what happens with Carson, because you're right. It's not really about Ben Carson. It's just he happens to be the current target.
Yes.
He's someone in a couple weeks. It always is. But Ben Carson, they ran a story in Politico, and the headline of the story says that Ben Carson admits fabricating West Point scholarship. Okay, let's just go through it word by word. His name is Ben Carson, so the first two words of the headline are true.
Okay.
As far as we know,
sure.
That's his name. They did omit doctor, interestingly enough. They never, for example, omit the word doctor when they talk about Jill
Gillibrand.
Jill Biden. When they talk about
Jill Biden. Mm-hmm.
And she has a PhD in education. They always call her Dr. Biden. They never call her Mrs. Biden or just Jill Biden. But having said that, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Then Biden's true. They get to admit, not true. He did not admit. In fact, he never said such a thing. Fabricating, he never said such a thing. And he didn't do such a thing. West Point scholarship, those phrases were used, but at this point, and not in relationship with fabricating or admitting. So the bottom line is the only thing they got right in the headline was his name. Now, this is what the left does, just so people understand. His story, if you read his book, and I've read, not the entire book, but I've read this part of it, and several other parts that are relevant so that I could be prepared for today's show. His story is that he went to as a 17-year-old. He's in high school. He's in the ROTC program. All of this is well verifiable and clearly true. So he goes to a big military dinner sort of celebration thing. While he's there, keep in mind he is the top ROTC student in the Detroit metro area. He's an honor student. doing great things. He has dinner there, and he meets a general. That general is impressed with him and says, "Wow, you should go to the military academy. You should go to West Point. You'd get in easily. I can help you with that, and you'd get a scholarship." Now, they say that they don't use the word scholarship, but I've actually myself read literature from that time frame in which it's recruiting literature in which they are offering, quote, full ride scholarships, including room and board. And they use the word full ride scholarship.
Well, there's a full ride scholarship. No one pays to go to the military academies, either be at West Point or Annapolis. Those people, those men and women are members of the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and they're actually even paid. They get a stipend while they're in college.
Exactly, and in fact, the literature says that. So Ben Carson, that's Ben Carson's story. He then says in his story that he told them that he was very honored, but he didn't really feel that going to the military was his calling in life. He really felt his calling in life was to be a doctor, and he intended to go to medical school. Okay, so that's the story he tells. Now, what they retell the story, and they say Ben Carson claims that he received a scholarship to West Point, and then they point out that he never even applied to West Point, which he didn't, but he says he doesn't in his own book.
Yes.
Right? And then they therefore assume that they then jump to the conclusion, therefore he's lying. And that's what they always do. They take what you say, they retell the story, they tell it differently on purpose. They don't attack what you actually said. They attack their retelling of your story, and they cast it as a lie. Now, that is itself a lie. That is dishonest, and I will tell you here and now, there's a whole bunch of people, but the people at Politico, they're liars. Anybody, the people who wrote that story, they're liars. That's all there is to it. I'm sorry, and I don't like to throw in the word lie, but I will tell you this. When I use it, I will back it up. I'm an attorney by trade, so if I'm prepared to convict you of being a liar, I'll have the evidence. I've got it. I'll marshal it. I'll explain it. I will not just call someone a liar for the fun of it.
Well, George,
I will not do, for example, what Mr. What's his name, O'Reilly did to Mr. Will. George Will the other night, because he disagreed with him and he didn't like the fact that George Will was critical of his book on Reagan. He calls him a liar. Never once suggested why he was a liar. He just called him a liar and a hack and went on. Okay, I do not call people a liar unless I can prove it. And the people at Politico, they lied. They edited the story, they changed the story, and they revamped the story so that it sounded close, not quite to the one he told. Then they labeled their version of his story a lie. That's dishonest. We're up against the clock. I just looked up and realized we've got to take a break. We will be right back. This is George Landreth. I'm with Rick Trader. You're listening to Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action. We will be coming back with more on this and many other topics. It's going to be a great show, so I hope you'll stick around. You can, of course, always listen to us in a variety of ways. You can even do it on the phone, for example, by calling 832-999-1199, and you can listen to us on your phone. It can't get much easier than that. We will be right back.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stockings. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
This is George Landreth and the Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action. Rick Trader, my co-host, and I are coming to you live. We're broadcasting from WNJC 1360 in the Philadelphia area. And, of course, you can always listen to rebroadcasts of today's show if you want to. Check out the website at www.ccrsnetwork.com or www.ccrshow.com. And you can, of course, listen to the show again there if you missed something or for some reason can't be here to listen to the show. We were just talking about the Politico story. I think it's important to point out here that I was mentioning that I've seen some literature from that time frame. I've also gone on their website at West Point. They have an online prospectus. And on that online prospectus, if you go to, it's a PDF, if you go to page 32, it says, quote, unquote, the following: as a cadet, you are a member of the U.S. Army and receive a full scholarship.
How about that?
Yeah, whoa, yeah. Oh, my gosh, he used the word.
How about that?
Yeah. And then it also bears repeating, I think people need to recognize, it's not just Politico's title. Politico later said, well, we changed the title. We removed the word fabricating. Mm-hmm. The story was equally false. It was equally a lie. The story essentially, there's no evidence anywhere that Carson ever claims he applied to West Point, and yet they act as if that's what he did. His book explicitly says that he told them he would not be applying to West Point, despite their generous and kind offer. And so it's just, I find it amazing. I think it's just kind of an amazing thing. I think it's odd that these reporters, the same people who had no curiosity about Barack Obama and his background, his school, are absolutely foaming at the mouth over a 17-year-old Ben Carson's recollection of precisely how this conversation went and expecting him to, I don't know, there's nothing inaccurate in it, but somehow they're still dissatisfied with a 65-year-old man's recollection of his 17-year-old experience. It's amazing to me.
It is to me, too. And, you know, George, when we talk about Ben Carson at 17, having a chance to go to West Point, he eventually went to Yale University. He's also a graduate of the University of Michigan Medical School. We know all about Ben Carson. I would like to know where and what Barack Obama was doing at 17. because we don't really know that much about Barack Obama, because all his school records and that of his wife are sealed. His medical records and that of his wife are sealed. So when you look at Ben Carson, when you look at Barack Obama, the difference, how the media is treating these two men, it's like day and night. And, you know, George, as far as abuse by the media, I actually think the events of this Politico article, this false Politico article about Ben Carson getting so much national attention, and the travesty, as you called it, the debate on CNBC got such national attention. I think it's good, George, because it shows the people out there that the mainstream media cannot be trusted. And that's a lesson that I think America needs to learn, that the mainstream media cannot be trusted.
Right, and again, I will use the liar word here because they've been caught red-handed so many times lying. I will say, by the way, Fox News is usually pretty good, but I have to say, Shep Smith yesterday was lying through his teeth. Either that or he's the most uninformed man in America, because these stories had all been completely debunked, one at a time. Boom, boom, boom. He didn't have to do any personal research. All he had to do was Google the story, and Top Hits would have given him the point-by-point debunking of all these insanely idiotic stories. And yet he was on TV yesterday afternoon, in the afternoon. We're not talking early a.m. We're talking 2 and 3 in the afternoon. And he's sitting here telling this stuff like he's just absolutely disgusted and amazed, and how he can't believe that conservatives continue to support this lying sack of garbage named Dr. Ben Carson. And all I have to say is that is shame on Fox News. He should be suspended at the very least. I call upon him, I will say here now, I call upon Shepard Smith to go on television and retract and profusely apologize for what he said, not for just being inaccurate, but for lying to the public. And 2, I challenge him to debate me anytime and any place. What a disgusting human being to do that. I'm just lying about people and tearing them down for the fun of it is simply not cool. It is, I was taught, at my home, my mom made it pretty clear. I was always told that when you lie about people and malign them, you're stealing from them something that matters. And in my home, I was taught that your honor and integrity were important. So it required me to behave well. It also required me not to try to take that from someone else simply because I thought it might be a fun endeavor. That they had a right to their reputation. And if their reputation was a good one, me stealing that goodness from them was wrong by me telling lies. Because not only did it harm me when I did it, I was basically stealing something of value from someone. So I was always taught that stealing someone's wallet was wrong and stealing their reputation was wrong. And I do not understand. I don't know what kind of home Shep Smith was raised in, but I can tell you this. His behavior yesterday was shameful. He may say, I didn't know, or he might say, my producers messed me over, because that's what they put on the screen. Fine, fire them.
Well, George, I'm not sure how these anchors work, but don't they write their own material?
Well, some do and some don't, and they do have people on their staff that a lot of their research and just hand them stuff. But like anything, you're responsible for your staff. So if your staff gives you something bad, fine, you can throw your staff under the bus. But I don't expect to see someone fired. I want to see somebody get nailed for this. When NBC said that somebody had doctored certain, it wasn't the editors, it was some, underling that doctored the video of George Zimmerman and so forth. In order to make that real, they've got to fire somebody. You can't just say that it was somebody else. You have to do something about it to prove that you take it seriously and you understand.
Well, George, I don't want to take anything for granted, that's for sure. But, Shep Smith is a homosexual. There's no secret about that. Ben Carson is pro-life, he's pro-family, he's pro-everything that Shep Smith is against. So once again, even though it's at Fox, I see a member of the media, in my opinion, putting their own personal feelings and their own agendas ahead of somebody else's.
Right. What it's clear here is that Shep Smith, personal life, I don't know. I don't care, quite frankly. That's his business, and that's, I'm not going to. But the bottom line is, if he has a political agenda and he finds that that Dr. Carson's political agenda offends his political agenda, then he needs to check himself and make sure he's not applying double standards. Because the reality is, what was done yesterday on his show was absolutely false. It was untrue. It was unacceptable, and I was shocked by it. And it's not just Politico or the rest. It's sometimes people that we consider our own friends.
Right.
We are up against the clock again. I say our friends just because of Fox News and so forth. We're up against the clock. We've got to take a quick break. But just so you know, I'll remind you, you are listening to the Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action. We want you to stick around. We've got lots more to discuss. A lot more interesting issues, and this is just the beginning of it. I'm your host, George Landreth, and of course, I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Rick Trader. Don't forget to check out our website at www.ff.org. We'll be right back.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stocking. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
For more of the Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action, this is George Landreth and my co-host Rick Trader. We're coming to you live on WNJC Radio 1360 on your AM dial in Philadelphia, of course, and around the world on Al Gore's amazing internet. You can listen to us at WNJCradio.com, iHeart.com, a lot of other ways, but we just want you to listen. I'm not terribly concerned about how you listen as long as you listen, right?
Amen.
Well, I want to quickly wind up this whole question on the media bias, but they talked about they've gone and they've accused him of lying about the story of some of his early, when he was a youngster, about some of his temper problems and it manifesting itself with violence, saying that everyone they've asked that's in his, that knew him when he was little says he was a nice guy. And I'm kind of puzzled by that. It's like that's proof that didn't happen. Because almost every time some guy it turns out he's a mass murderer, or like Jeffrey Dahmer, he eats his victims. The neighbors all thought he was a nice guy. So I don't understand what that means. At any rate, that proves he's a liar, I guess. Even though if you Google the story, you'll find other media stories as far as 20 years ago substantiating and telling the exact same story. They couldn't be bothered to use Google, though, because doggone it, that's hard. And then the same thing, they have this big story about the story in his book about the Yale class in which a exam they did an experiment on the students by claiming to have lost their test. They had to take another test. They gave him a much harder, longer test. Everyone left. He stayed. The teacher came up to him and told him it was just a test. The teacher had someone there from the local school paper. They took a picture of him. Their point that he's lying is they could not find a picture of him in the paper. He didn't say they posted the picture. He said they took one. And I've had pictures taken me a million. I ran for Congress once. They took a gazillion pictures of me. You know what? There's not a gazillion pictures of me in the paper, though. They only ran a few of those. And there is a story in the paper. Other criticism of him is he named a class wrong. He referred to it, I think, as Perceptions 210. It turns out it was a psych class on individual perceptions 210. And he got that detail wrong. So, and there was, in fact, the experiment he described. It was written up in the school paper, the Yale paper. They could have found all this out if they'd wanted to, but because they don't bother to check, it means that Ben Carson's lying. Again, that to me just demonstrates the press is fundamentally dishonest. They cannot be trusted. We have to call them out on it. I believe we have to declare war on them, not literal war, but political war on them. As conservatives, we should not listen to the shows that engage in this game. We should boycott them. We should hit them in the pocketbook. That's the only thing that will make a difference here. And we have to make it clear we're not going to put up with the lies anymore. You say you're the media, then behave like it. You want to pretend you're not the DNC, but all you are is you're readers and typers for the DNC. That's all they are. And then you see this with the finance stuff. I know we got to move on to our next topic, but just real quickly, I find it interesting that we were essentially told that in 2010, it's all we got out of these guys was 2010, 2011, 2012 was that the Republican nominee or likely nominee was very wealthy, and as a result couldn't possibly relate to average everyday folks. They have attacked Trump with a little bit of that. Talk about his inherited wealth, blah blah blah. But interestingly though, when the Kennedys are in the news, that's not a problem. All they talk about is the charity work they do that's designed to distract us from their substance abuse and abuse of women problems that they have. They don't talk about their trust funds and so forth. It's just amazing to me. Now, you hear John McCain was married to a wealthy woman. We heard lots about that in 2008. We didn't hear about John Kerry's habit of finding wealthy women to marry. He's done that twice in his life. That was almost never discussed in 2004. So now, of course, in 2012, the Republican nominee was too rich. If it's Marco Rubio, I don't know that it will be, but if it is, guarantee they're going to tell us he's not rich enough. And that the fact that he had student loans to pay off, the fact that he's, not always had the most money in his bank account means he's irresponsible and can't be trusted with the presidency. And of course, though, Hillary, despite the fact she's rolling the cash, she is totally middle class. She can relate to all of us. This is the sort of duplicity and dishonesty we get out of these folks. And it's about time to say enough's enough. I don't have any more to say on that, but you certainly should take us out on that topic, and we'll move on.
My thought, when you talk about poor presidents, I think three of the poorest presidents we ever had. One was Abraham Lincoln. The other was Ulysses S. Grant, who I believe declared bankruptcy. And another was Harry Truman, who was a haberdasher, who worked in a hat and shirt store. I mean, there wasn't a lot of wealth there.
Mm-hmm. Now,
yeah, at least two of them.
Interesting is, the Ulysses S. Grant was a capable general, but just an incredibly ineffective president. He wasn't personally corrupt, but his entire administration was marred with corruption and so forth. But what's interesting is the other two you named are pretty darn good presidents. One of them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. 2 to 3 were pretty good presidents.
Yeah.
I agree with you on Grant, but when you talk about Harry Truman, when you talk about Abraham Lincoln, I think Harry Truman was very courageous in ending the Second World War by using nuclear weapons. I think that history has been very kind to Harry Truman. And what more do you need to say about Abraham Lincoln other than just say the name Abraham Lincoln?
Agreed. And I would then point out that one of our richest presidents was George Washington. He was also a very good president. So what that tells me is you can be poor and be a great president. You can be rich and be a great president. It doesn't matter that much. What matters is, are you a great leader? And do you believe the sorts of things that matter? Which I think actually is a good segue to our next topic. Because we always talk you always hear this about our elections are so fractured. They're divisive. They're emotionally charged. People, and I've noticed that, people sometimes cannot help but become angry and offended when we discuss politics and among people that have differing opinions. And the question is, why is it like that? Because you can talk sports with people. You could. Are you an Eagles fan?
Yes, sir.
See, I'm a Redskins fan, and I bet you we could have.
I feel sorry for you, George. I really do.
Hate me now. I know.
I just feel sorry for you.
Oh yeah, well, I do appreciate your sympathy. It's been a rough decade or so. When I was younger, as a young man, it was a much better. We had Joe Gibbs, and they were winning Super Bowls, but that's been a while.
Well, we won't talk about that.
Right, but my point is, we could have a conversation about the Eagles and the Redskins, and you wouldn't have to hate me, and I wouldn't have to hate you, and we wouldn't have to raise our voice and yell at each other. But for some reason, we get to politics, it works that way. And I have my theory about why this is, and I believe it's because politics is often a reflection of our moral values. And moral values are so close to you. Who I like as a team, I often joke with my kids that, if you're a good person, you've got to support the Redskins. But they always know that's tongue-in-cheek. The reality is, I will tell you why I'm a Redskins fan. It's because I was born and raised in Virginia, and that was the team. If I'd been born and raised somewhere else, I'd probably be a fan of somewhere else. I understand that. That's
George, can I interrupt for a minute and tell you what's good about Redskin fans? And that's they hate the Cowboys. And anybody who hates the Cowboys has got to be good at my book.
Fair enough. Have a comment.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but sorry, George.
No, that's a good point. My point is, so I'm a Redskin fan. It doesn't go to the core of what I believe and who I am. It goes to where I kind of grew up. If I'd grown up somewhere else, I'd probably be a different fan. But the luck of the draw was I was born here. So, and I think that's true for most people. Most people would admit that there's probably, there's a reason why they're a fan. It doesn't actually go to their, but your values do, and so it becomes much more personal. And as a result, we get offended by that. And it led me to this question of left-right. What's dividing left-right? And I would argue that probably the biggest single thing that divides the left and the right, and it's not everyone, and I believe this is at its core, which is on the right, there is a general belief that there are moral absolutes. There are certain things that are just right, and there are certain things that are just wrong. And we can agree or disagree, but we can't really change the reality. It's wrong to steal things from people. It's just, and the other side sometimes, I always hear people say, when someone tells me, well, that might be wrong for you, but it's not wrong for me, then I know that I'm talking to someone who's probably a liberal, because that's not really something that conservatives generally say. We generally tend to believe that these things are right or wrong. And I think that's at the core of what some of these distinctions are. Well, I know we'll have to pick this up when we come back, and then we're going to have to get through a couple other topics to make it through. So we'll have to be efficient in our time. Hopefully I can be efficient, and I'll call upon you to do the same. I'm generally the main offender, however. But anyhow, we've got to take a quick break. Don't fret. We will be right back. I'm George Landreth. He's Rick Trader. You're listening to the Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action on WNJC Radio 1360. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stocking. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
Greetings. We're back with the final segment of the Frontiers of Freedom Hour of Action. I can't believe I'm saying that because it seems like we just barely got on the air, but time flies when you're having fun. I'm George Landreth. This is my co-host, Rick Trader. We're coming to you live on WNJC Radio 1360 in Philadelphia, and of course around the world on the internet. Speaking of the internet, I want to remind you to go to our website if you want to read more of the sorts of things we're talking about at www.ff.org. Well, we were talking about kind of why things are so fractured, and it seems to me that that's part of what's going on here is that you have a battle of cultures, and you have one culture that essentially believes that it gets to define what's right and wrong, that there is no kind of permanency, whether it's to the Constitution, that it kind of everything is up for debate, and we can redefine things, and we can change things, and over time things naturally need to morph. And another side that says, you know what, there's just some things that are right and wrong, and some things are set in stone, and we don't really have a right to change that. And so you have this collision of these views and values. And to me, that is where you get this sort of heat, if you will, when you discuss politics. I don't know what you think, but to me, that's part of it. I mean, when I look at politics, there's some arguments I will not make, even if they would lead to the outcome I'm seeking, and it's because they're not honest arguments. And yet I've had people tell me, liberal hosts, who've told me when they've made an argument, or during a break, started to make an argument, And I pointed out to them, I said, well, what you're saying isn't really true, and I explained historically why it wasn't. I thought I was enlightening them. They said, oh, yeah, I knew that. I was just hoping you didn't.
Oh, what you see?
And I'm just like, what? I was amazed. So he didn't use that argument in the next segment. But I thought to myself, wow, I thought he was just uninformed. No, he's informed and prepared to lie to his audience.
Oh, anything. They will do anything, George.
And I'm not saying that I get everything always right. Anybody who spends their entire lifetime talking and explaining will misstate things sometimes. But what I can tell you is I have never knowingly lied to people and told them something when I knew the facts that I was telling were not true. And that stunned me. And I think, to me, that's part of the difference, is that there's a side, his response was, he's so invested in telling his side of things that lying is okay because it's part of the greater good. Cheating is okay because, after all, if we can just get Barack Obama elected, look at all the good that will happen. We'll get free health care for everybody, and we'll do all this good stuff. So if we go to elections and commit voter fraud, well, yeah, maybe that's not the best thing to do, but we're doing it for a good reason, so it's okay. And that's where you have this clash going on. And to me, that ultimately is the source of the heat, if you will. Whereas we can disagree on all kinds of things, like what your favorite color is, what your favorite team is, where your favorite vacation spot is. We don't have to get all mad about that, but we do about politics. And I think the reason is because we're coming at it from radically different viewpoints.
George, do you feel that's changed over the last 20 years or so?
I believe it has. I think it's changed a lot. There was a time, if you go back, let's go back to, we were just talking about when Harry Truman was president. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that the moral values of the average supporter of Harry Truman was radically different than the moral values of somebody on the other side of the table. I think they viewed politics differently. I think they had different priorities when it came to politics. But I'm not sure that they were... the divide I just described existed at that time. I would argue this is a divide that has come in more modern times. It's the modern left.
Well, when you look at the moral values in Harry Truman's time, the moral values of today, the moral value battles of today are very different than Harry Truman's time. The social battles are very different than that in Harry Truman's time. In Harry Truman's time, it was about civil rights. Excuse me. But today it's about defense of marriage. It's about gay marriage. It's about the LGBT agenda. That's where the moral battle.
Exactly. I'll give you an example. In 1950 or 1945, the issue then was, as you said, civil rights. Are we going to treat all Americans the same and give them equality in the law, or are we going to have a fiction that basically we're going to look at some other factors and decide if you get, to be treated fairly or not? Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a moral issue. But what was interesting is it didn't divide the parties. It may have divided some people, but what you had was bipartisan support. If you can go back and look at the various steps that were taken to make sure that there's liberty, it might surprise some people to find out that those laws do not pass without the support of Republicans, and Republicans supported those at a higher percentage than Democrats did.
Well, in fact, it was the Democrats that supported segregation.
Right.
Now, it was the Republicans that were favoring integration at that time.
Exactly. What you had, most of this got filibustered at that time frame in the Senate, and it was filibustered by Democrats. Mm-hmm. So, but my point though is you had, I think, much more agreement. Whereas today, it just in Fairfax County, where my kids go to school, they just enacted a policy to decide that if a boy identifies himself as a girl, notwithstanding the fact that he has little boy parts, he can shower and go to the bathroom in the girl's bathroom. And the girls that are uncomfortable with having a boy showering with them, because he does have little boy parts, they're being closed-minded because, after all, he thinks of himself as a girl, and they need to respect that. Otherwise, they're being disrespectful. That's the crazy world we live in. It's like, what? I mean, if he wants to identify himself as a little girl, that's fine. He can do. I don't care, but he's going to go to the bathroom in the little boy's room because he has little boy parts. That's how it works, bud.
Yeah.
We're not trying to tell you how to think. You can think however you want. I don't care. I will not lift a finger to tell him how he should think of himself. He can do that. His mom and dad can do that. I don't care. What I do care about is he doesn't get I don't care what he thinks of himself as. I think of myself as an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback. But that doesn't mean the Redskins have to let me into the locker room and give me a locker room.
Well, I think you'd probably be a lot better than the guy they got now.
Well, perhaps. I don't know. But you maybe at a different age. I don't know. But bottom line there is, how I perceive myself isn't terribly irrelevant to the rest of the world. They don't have to perceive me as I perceive myself. I'm joking about that because that would require me to be stark raving mad to think of myself as a Hall of Fame quarterback.
You mean you're not Sonny Jurgensen?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not.
wow.
And incidentally, he started out as an Eagle, by the way. See,
Yes,
there's
he
a
did.
partnership
That was a
between us.
stupid trade.
Well, let's go to. I think it's time maybe to shift gears. We've only got 3 minutes left or something like that. Let's shift gears and talk about the biggest, the most pressing national security, environmental, economic, the most important moral problem that is facing America today. Can you guess what it might be?
My God, I mean, where do we begin? What did you?
I mean, it's obviously global warming.
Oh, okay.
I'm joking,
Right.
but if you listen to people like John Kerry and our president and most of the people who were at the most recent Democratic debate, the global warming is in fact the most pressing issue. The left now wants to prosecute people who disagree with them on climate change. Mm-hmm. And Senator Whitehouse, the Rhode Island senator, he's been lobbying for prosecutions of folks over climate change. And so has the New York Attorney General. So it's just interesting to me that they now are essentially feeling that they need to open up a criminal investigation, and they want criminal charges against people who have been arguing against climate change. And I'm flabbergasted by this. It strikes me as, first of all, climate change is clearly the left's new religion. And that's fine. They can have a religion they want. But I'm not going to, because someone belongs to a different religion than me, require that we open up a criminal investigation into them, the fact they go to a different church than I do. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make them heretics. It's just amazing to me. I mean, I am stunned. They want to use the RICO, that's the Racketeering, Influence, and Corruption Organizations Act, or statute. The RICO statutes were created to prosecute the mafia. Mm-hmm. Now they want to use them to prosecute people with whom they disagree on public policy stuff. And I'm flabbergasted. I don't even know where to begin on this stuff. And this isn't new, by the way. People want to say this is new. In 2008, wrote an article about the left and the fact that they were calling for Nuremberg-style war crimes trials for these guys. It's amazing to me. And yet they're the ones lying about the data. They're the ones that changed the data. They've changed the data no less than a dozen times in the last few years. When you're changing the data to get the results you seek, how can we possibly trust the data that you're giving us? It's crazy stuff.
Well, it is crazy, and also we need to talk about
the last word on this one.
Well, George, greenhouse gases. Let's talk for greenhouse gases for a few seconds. 98% of the greenhouse gas is water vapor. And that CO2 is not a poison. It's actually a plant food. If we didn't have CO2, we wouldn't have anything green growing on Earth. So with those two things as facts, should we eliminate greenhouse gases?
Well, the greenhouse gases are actually a good thing. After all,
I know. And 98% is water vapor.
Vary between 400 degrees Fahrenheit and 20 below is because we have this blanket around us that insulates our planet.
Indeed. George, another great show. I mean, time flies. I mean, this is the fastest hour of my week. It really is.
Well, we will... we're off the air, right?
Oh, no, we're still on the air, actually.
Oh, we're still on. Okay. Well, then
for the next 30 seconds.
Fair enough. Then I will just thank our listeners for tuning in. I really enjoyed doing the show. I want to thank you, Rick, for being my co-host. And I want to thank our listeners for their commitment to freedom and constitutionally limited government, because I'm a firm believer that it's worth fighting for. Freedom's definitely worth defending. Don't forget to visit our website, www.ff.org. This is George Landreth and my co-host, Rick Trader, signing off. Let freedom ring.
Playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, conservativecommandosradionetwork.com and ccrn.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stocking. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots, and welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pun and Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, AM, FM 24/7, and our newest affiliate, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network. And joining me today as my co-host is the patriot from the Garden State, my very dear friend, Anna Little. Anna, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Glad to be with you, Rick.
And great to have you with us, Anna. And what's on your radar screen today?
Well, I think I've got to talk a little bit to our listeners about media bias. I am a little frustrated, okay, that's an understatement, with the treatment that is being received by Ben Carson, who is nothing but a success story, living the American dream, and then going one step further to innovate in medicine and save lives. And this man is being browbeaten by sound bites, which are being taken out of context and completely inflated into points that he was not trying to make. He's being abused by the mainstream media at this point. And I'd like to also talk about Carly Fiorina, who is the only woman in this race on the Republican side. And it seems that the coverage of what's going on with Carly Fiorina is non-existent. I mean, really, it's shocking to me when we are facing the potential, almost de facto nominee being a woman on the Democrat side, and we are certainly facing an argument by the Democrats that this would be a historic election where we're going to put the first woman president in office, and here we have a woman who's qualified, who's running on the Republican side, and she just can't seem to get any traction. Now, you know, Rick, sometimes, as you pointed out off air with me, perhaps people are rejecting her, she's not resonating with them, but I doubt that. I mean, I did take some time before we got on air today to do some research on Carly Fiorina's background, and even the accusation of her having been asked to step down as the CEO of Hewlett-Packard after their merger with Compaq, even that seems ridiculous because the number of employees that Hewlett-Packard had at the beginning of her tenure and the number of employees at the end of her tenure, it had actually increased by about 50% as a result of that merger. And we all know through mergers and acquisitions, somebody gets laid off. I mean, she held off. It didn't happen immediately. She held off for a good while and asked folks within the organization to take their vacations, to schedule them, to try to assist the company in keeping everybody employed. But in mergers and acquisitions, talk to any of the CEOs of these top 200 companies or top 20 companies. I think Hewlett-Packard was in the top 20, I think, as designated by Forbes. She was the first woman to hold a CEO position there. These are firsts, which the liberal left ought to love. I mean, in case you don't recognize it, Ben Carson's a man of color. The liberal left should not be abusing these two or ignoring these two. And I do think, Rick, as you well pointed out before we got on the air, I think we're allowing the liberal left in some ways to choose the candidate that will run under the Republican ticket. And I think we, the people, have got to do something about that.
I agree.
Rick.
I agree with what you're saying, Anna. And when you talk about Carly Fiorina's background at Hewlett-Packard and everything, let's call things the way they are. It's business. Businesses are in business to make a profit. Hewlett-Packard is in business to provide a product and to make a profit for its owners. If the company does not make a profit, it does not exist. It cannot exist. As a byproduct of offering a product and making a profit for its owners, there's something called employment. It is not the job of businesses just to give jobs to people, because unless the company is profitable, it goes out of business.
That's absolutely correct.
So if a business...
Common sense, Rick.
And so, Anna, if a business, to maintain its profitability, has to cut jobs, unfortunately, sometimes things like that happens. Anna, life is not fair. I challenge anybody, before they jump in a shower tonight, after they declothe, to look in a mirror for a stamp that's on their body that says life is guaranteed. Okay? There's nothing guaranteed in life. Life is what you make out of it. And I've been fired. I've been laid off. I've gone through a lot of jobs myself personally. So I know this. There is no guarantees in life of a job. Companies have got to maintain a profit or else everybody's out of work.
Well, this is all true. And I think what's even more significant is that when you look at what the liberal left has been standing for, first woman president, advancing people of color, talking about racism, I actually think they promote racism, but they speak against racism while they promote it. Mm-hmm. But at this point, what I'm trying to say, I think, is that Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina ought not to be attacked by the liberal media, as they actually fit the mold in several respects of what the liberal media seeks to accomplish. And they should be held out as an example of what we should all aspire to become. And they do fall into the demographics of what the liberal left seeks to speak to as far as their voting categories. I mean, they divide everybody into these voting groups. Well, you've got, professional women with Carly Fiorina. You've got the medical professionals, but you've also got men of color who are in the professions. With Ben Carson, if you want to speak at it from a liberal angle, I don't understand why we can't be more vocal as a group about this abuse that is going on and point it out for what it is. Interference and meddling by the liberals, who are our opponents in the election process, in the choice of the candidate for the Republican ticket, or in this case, the choice for the conservative Republican ticket. Both of them are on the conservative side. Carly Fiorina did not come up through the mainstream establishment. She's coming from the conservative side. I know that because her backers are folks that I sit with off the Hill in the invitation-only meetings, we're all supporting folks that are not coming out through that mainstream political channel. And so she's on the conservative side. You might not agree with everything that she thinks, but, as we've said in different contexts, if you want to find someone you agree with 100% of the time, you have to look in the mirror. If you agree with someone 50% or more, well, then they deserve a look. And if it gets to 80% or more, you ought to vote for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've said that before. So I guess what I'm trying to expose here on Conservative Commandos Radio to our listeners, and I'm hoping that they will take that information and broadcast it in their own way, is that the liberal left media is being hypocritical in ignoring Carly Fiorina and not promoting her in the way that they would promote a liberal woman in a similar circumstance. I challenge them to find one, by the way. And their abuse of Ben Carson, who is in a leadership position on the Republican side. We need to call them out on this. We need to stop allowing them to meddle in our choices. This is a private organization, the Republican political party. This is not a public entity. We get to choose our candidate, and none of these people, as Ted Cruz expertly pointed out, none of these people are going to vote for the Republican. No. Or they should consider it, but they're not going to because they're card-carrying liberal Democrats, left-wing liberal Democrats. So we have to stop letting them meddle in the choices of our candidates by hosting these debates or by hosting forums. Forget about it. Let them host a forum for the liberal person.
Amen on that. Amen on that. Hey, Anna, we are up against the break. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, World Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. Our latest affiliate is Rebooting Liberty Radio Network. Glad to be a part with them. Don't go away, Anna, and I will be right back.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle sportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stockings. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little. Yours truly, Rick Trader, Mr. John Forsyth Jr., working the boards. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com and ccrsnetwork.com. Or mornings at 9 a.m., you can log on to leadingedgeradionetwork.com. At 1 p.m., you can hear rebroadcast by logging on to roarradio.net. And at 6 p.m., the place is thepunditpress.com. You can also hear our show any time of the day from your telephone simply by calling 832-999-1199. Anna Little is my co-host today. It's always great to work with Anna. And Anna, what else is on your radar screen?
Well, I have been looking at what's going on internationally, and I always like to focus in the Ukraine area because I don't hear a lot about it on the mainstream media. Forbes in World Affairs actually has an article out today at 11:55 a.m. I found it at Forbes.com. The title of the article is ISIS, Ukraine, Georgia. In Putin's world, it is all connected. It's written by Melik Kailan, who is a contributor for Forbes.com. Now, basically, the thrust of this article is pointing out that Russia's activity on the world stage is coordinated. You'll remember that there was this surprise entrance by Russia into Syria. Well, it seems to have been coordinated with the ceasefire in Ukraine, which had come to a standoff where Russia couldn't get her way. And so then they went into Syria, and obviously the attention of the world went on their activity in Syria. The Ukrainian local elections were preceded by a smear job on the former president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, who is now governor of Odessa. And that same smear job was used to justify Tbilisi's crackdown on the pro-Saakashvili TV channel Rustavi 2 in Georgia, obviously while everyone is paying attention to what's going on in Syria. So just in case you thought maybe Russia had turned their attention away from Ukraine in order to do that move in Syria, no, it was done. Its timing served what was going on in Ukraine also. Mm-hmm. And the election was indeed won by the pro-Russian candidate. The smear job was attributed to WikiLeaks Ukraine, but then after the election, it was determined that it was actually originating from an IP address in Russia that was rerouted through Georgia, and then in Georgia, the WikiLeaks Ukraine tag was added, and then it was disseminated at that point. So it was, I believe, deliberate, and I think the fellow that wrote this article, Melik Kailan, is trying to make it clear that it was deliberate by Russia, and they have manipulated an election using the media. Guess where they learned how to do that? You know, the propaganda machine. Okay, and there was also these renewed attacks by pro-Russians on the Ukrainian front, which came along with these other activities, but also the horrific bombing by ISIS of the Russian tourist aircraft, because there was this doubt as to who was involved in that, and the Russians did have some media speculation that the CIA or the Britain's M16 may have been involved in in that, and it turned out that it was not true, that it was likely a terrorist bomb by either ISIS or by some other Al-Qaeda like organization. So, but all of this has been used to benefit Russia's interests in the Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So I just need to point that out. I'm having a frustrating day, Rick.
Well, I think that was great to make the connection between those events. And
well, we have to thank this fella, Melik Kailan, who's a contributor. I'm saying Kailan. It's Kaylan. It's Forbes.com. Check it out, everybody. But I think he's right. This is the way Russians think. It's the way they thought during the Cold War, and we need to remember who we're dealing with. Just because the Cold War is technically no more doesn't mean Russians have changed their thought pattern.
Well, we are dealing with a former officer with the KGB.
Yeah.
In Vladimir Putin. I think Vladimir Putin his goal is to reunite the Soviet Union.
Well, we better get involved because, we certainly get, and we don't wait for government diplomacy at this point. I mean, frankly, we're in charge. Our government is clueless right now when it comes to international affairs. The entire globe is on fire.
Well,
now's the time. Open your mouth. Say something.
I want to make the point is, earlier, before we went to the break, you were talking about the media's treatment of Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina. And as you and I discussed off there, I think it's their efforts to pick our candidates. So when they talk about Ben Carson, when they attack Ben Carson or Donald Trump or whatever, I think part of it is because they can't talk about the real issues. Because if they would discuss the real issues, the real pertinent issues that's facing our country today, their side is nothing but a miserable failure. They can't talk about Iran. They can't talk about the Middle East. They can't talk about Obamacare. They can't talk about the economy because their side, 8 years now, we have had nothing but miserable failure. So they can't talk about that. So what they do is they get caught with their hand in a cookie jar, and one more time they got look over there. Ben Carson never went to West Point.
Yeah, but you know what? West Point, that argument with Ben Carson.
Oh, I know all that. I'm not bringing up the point of Ben Carson or West Point or anything. What I'm saying is, or trying to say is, that I think part of what the media is doing right now is trying to divert our attention from the real pressing issues, such as what's going on in Syria, such as what's going on in the Ukraine or the Middle East. They don't want to talk about those issues.
No, they don't.
They don't.
Look over here while I do what I'm doing over there.
Exactly.
See what I'm doing over there.
That's what I'm getting at. Hey, Anna, let's take our next break now. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNGC 1360, our flagship station in Philly. Around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pun and Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, and AM/FM 24/7. Our newest affiliate is Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, and today's show is brought to you by the First Amendment and protected by the Second. Don't go away. Anna and I will be right back with our first guest, Carmine Sabia from BizPac.
You've heard Paul Delks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired as I am about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stockings. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Businessman there, drink my wine.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. log on to theleadingedgeradionetwork.com, or 1 p.m. log on to roarradio.net, or at 6 p.m. log on to thepunditpress.com. And you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. And we are having a little bit of difficulty reaching our next guest, or our first guest, and so that gives us a little opportunity to chat some more. What else is on your radar screen?
Well, I think we have to make sure that we participate in what's going on in our government, and I think that means international affairs. So as we were discussing the connection and the unified approach that Russia has, using all of its actions on the world stage toward its one end, and everything contributing toward that end, we've got to make sure that we talk about this and get the attention of folks who are in a position to make decisions. And, I think we can't delegate or relegate our job as we the people to the elected official once they win the election and take office. We have to stay ever vigilant, because if we don't stay on these people, they get lax and they start to listen to folks who perhaps don't know our minds, and so therefore don't represent us well. So we've got to make sure that if we disagree with what's going on in foreign policy, that we open our mouths and say so. And to do that to a representative who has standing to do so. And I would say hit the Senate first on it, and certainly don't be afraid to reach out to the White House. Whether you're a Democrat or not shouldn't matter. He's supposed to serve us all. If you disagree with what's being done, then we need to let people know about that. And I think, we have been doing that to quite an extent. I mean, we've certainly been doing it in the election process, as exhibited by taking the majority in the House, majority in the Senate. Now we're heading to 2016 for the White House. Change in the office holders in the legislature, I think, even speaks louder, because they are expecting, once they're elected and acting as incumbents, to keep their seats. And so one of the loudest ways we can speak is through the election process. But I don't think we stop there. I think in the off season, we still need to communicate directly with whoever's holding that office, whether they were our opponent in the election or whether they're our guy who won, who's just getting lax. We've got to make sure we direct this government. Mm-hmm. And if we see something like what was written in Forbes.com by this Melek Kylon about Russia's intentions, we need to call attention to that. Email it to people. Maybe they don't have time to read everything, although Forbes, they ought to be reading. Yeah. But, get it out to them with your own comment of, yes, I'm so glad he wrote this article. Read it, please. Act accordingly. This Vladimir Putin may not be open and honest with us in his international relations, and therefore we need to be ahead of him. We need to anticipate what's going on. And when we see him make a misstep, we can't sit back and say, well, it's not on U.S. soil, so it's not our problem. No, we've got to make sure that we speak up against that on the world stage just as strongly as he's speaking by his actions.
I agree. Not to change the subject, Anna, but what are you looking for coming out of tonight's debate?
Well, from those who are on the main stage, I am looking for decided leadership to be exhibited. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hear everybody singing the song of what we conservatives have been asking for.
Right. Hey, Anna.
I want to see decided leadership.
Right. Anna, not to cut you off, but we do have our first guest with us at the present time. Carmine Sabia Jr. started his own professional wrestling business at the age of 18 and went on to become a real estate investor. Currently, he is a journalist who covers political news and current events for BizPack Review. Carmine, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
We are doing great, and not only are we welcoming you to our show, but we are welcoming you to the Conservative Commandos radio network. You and two of your friends are going to be starting your own show next Monday night here on WNJC 1360, as part of Conservative Commandos. And tell us a little bit about your show, Carmine.
Sure, man. Well, we've done it on the internet for a couple of months, and making the jump to terrestrial. So my friends are Eric July. He is a correspondent sometimes on the Blaze TV, sometimes on Fox News and Fox News Business. And also Charles R. Patrick, who is another conservative voice. He started the Pull Your Pants Up Challenge, which was rather famous for a few years back when they were doing the Ice Bucket Challenge and all that. We got with that challenge, and it went pretty viral. So the show focuses on, it's a lot like my writing for BizPack Review. It tends to be current events, whatever's happening that day.
Right.
Political news, obviously, mostly. But also social news, current events from a conservative standpoint. Trying to bring some truth to the people rather than the liberal mumbo-jumbo they're subjected to all day long. I wrote one particular article today that had me almost falling out of my seat laughing, which was about these kids at Yale who are just bent out of shape that their world is being destroyed because people wore offensive Halloween costumes. And I thought, even liberals, as far as liberals go, they've come a long way from the 60s. They're actually like the 60s. There was some actual legitimate issues. They're really reaching now for stuff to be offended by.
It seems like, Carmine, people go out of their way to be offended by somebody about something. But when you talk about the Halloween costumes, what are they finding offensive now?
It wasn't offensive to the point like, oh my God, that's so horrible, like the Bruce Jenner costume that people got all bent out of shape about, which I thought was hilarious. But he wears a costume, why can't we? But no,
I can remember going to Halloween parties dressed as a girl. That's why I was chuckling.
Now it's an actual thing.
Yeah,
but
sure was.
But quite interestingly, so they're offended because like somebody might want to dress like a character who maybe is an African American character, but they're white, and so it's cultural appropriation, and it's denying them. Now, get ready for this.
Wait, what was that word again? Cultural? What?
Cultural appropriation.
Well, that's the first time I've heard it, but I'm going to write it down and use it.
You've never heard cultural appropriation?
No. Not to show my ignorance, but to show my honesty, no, I never have.
So that's one of the biggest things the liberals complain about. Like if you're a white person who listens to rap, you're cultural appropriation, or if you're a white person who decides you want to have dreadlocks for whatever god-awful reason, that's cultural appropriation. So these are the things they're getting upset about. So if you're a white child and you want to dress as, say, Pocahontas for Halloween, that's cultural appropriation. And so that's the stuff that they're offended by now. And so I find it incredibly, incredibly hilarious that's what we're at. That's where we're at now in society. That's the things they're concerned about.
Carmine, please tell our audience, because we had a little bit of hard time getting a hold of you, so we only have a minute or so left. Briefly, tell our audience where they could follow your writings, where we can follow your work, and also, once again, the title of your show. We're going to be running it Mondays at 5 p.m. live here on WNJC 1360 as part of the Conservative Commandos radio network. So please give all the pertinent information.
Sure, absolutely. So it's Parabellum Radio. Parabellum is a Latin phrase, means prepare for war. If you want peace, prepare for war is the full Latin phrase. And so, and we do. We prepare for war every week. You can follow me at bizpackreview.com. That's BIZPAC review.com. That's about it, man. I mean, you're going to, I'm not a very politically correct person, so I'm sure your audience will be okay with that, but
I'm okay with that, and that's all that counts.
Nothing we say is politically correct. We call things as we see them. My co-hosts happen to be black conservatives, which kind of like snowflakes, and they're very rare. And their number one thing is they despise Black Lives Matter, like as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things we want to talk about, man, and I think your audience will be they'll really dig it.
Carmine Sibby, I want to thank you for joining us on Conservative Commando. Sorry it was short, but that's the life of live radio. We'll speak with you on Monday.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Take care. God bless. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, World Radio, AM/FM 24/7, and our newest affiliate, RebootingLibertyRadioNetwork.com. Don't go away, Anna and I will be right back.
Yeah, that's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stockings. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and yours truly, Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our show, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern. Log on to leadingedgeradionetwork.com. At 1 p.m., you can log on to roarradio.net. And at 6 p.m., log on to thepunditpress.com. You can also hear our show any time of the day by calling 832-999-1199. And Anna, you know, tomorrow is the 11th of November, that being Veterans Day, the traditional Veterans Day. I don't know when it's celebrated anymore, Anna. I don't know if it's celebrated yesterday, tomorrow, so we'll celebrate it every day of the year.
Well, we should celebrate it every day of the year. The veterans are, you know, the most honored among our population here worldwide, and certainly in the United States. Those who are willing to put their lives on the line for others, to put themselves in harm's way for our freedoms. Those people need to be elevated, they need to be honored, and they need to be cared for. And we know we have problems here in the United States with the administration of Veterans Affairs. And so we've got to first honor them on Veterans Day, which is tomorrow, but honor them every day by seeing to their needs when they return home.
Anna, John, what I think we're going to do is let's play this song. We were going to have our friend Doug Driesel on with us. Doug is the host of Doug and Blaine Explain the Game here on WNJC 1360 as part of the Conservative Commandos radio show. But Doug Driesel is also an entertainer, a songwriter, singer, and we asked Doug to come on to join us to talk about a song that he has written in honor of our veterans. And the title of the song is the John J. Pershing Veterans Home. And maybe by the time we're done with this song, maybe we could get Doug on with us to give us the backstory on the song. But in the meantime, this is our tribute to all the men and women who have sacrificed their lives or part of their lives or part of their time to make this country the greatest country in the history of God's blue-green planet.
There's heroes hid away in every doorway down these halls. They fought back in their younger days. It's a fight now to recall what they've given for this country and all the battles they have known. It's the John J. Pershing Veterans Home. Well, that's Arlie in his wheelchair. He fought in World War II. Yeah, he got back home but never had the life that he once knew. Those legs he used to run across the battlefields are gone in the John J. Pershing Veterans Home. Oh, the stories he could tell, if he could stand to tell the story, how they fought their way through hell and maybe found a moment's glory. But you sure can see the soldier in the eyes of those who roam. That John J. Pershing Veterans Home. Now Jack leans on his walker. He seems a little lost. He can't keep track of where he is. That's what his courage cost. He only knows his buddies are all gone and he's alone in the John J. Pershing Veterans Home. Oh, the stories he could tell, if he could just recall the stories, how they fought their way through hell and maybe found a moment's glory. But you sure can see the soldier in the eyes of those that roam. That John J. Pershing Veterans Home.
runs a single tear.
Yeah, the guns are falling silent, and a few have lost their sight. The ones they now take orders from, they're all dressed in white. Why is it easy to forget these men and women who live on at the John J. Pershing Veterans Home?
And that is Doug DeForest, also known as Doug Driesel, the host of Doug and Blaine Explains the Game, which is heard here on the Conservative Commandos radio show Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Sorry we weren't able to get a hold of Doug to get the backstory on his song, and his song again is the John J. Pershing Veterans Home, which is a real place, by the way. And perhaps we can get Doug on in the future to talk about that. But if you'd like to hear that song again, I'm going to post it one more time at the top of my webpage or my Facebook page. So check it out, Rick Trader on Facebook. Rick Trader on Facebook. And you could play this song that we just played, the John J. Pershing Veterans Home, as well as Doug's other songs. So, Anna, we do have a couple of minutes before we go to our next break, but that was our way of honoring our veterans.
Yes, and I think it was a beautiful way to honor our veterans. We have to remember that freedom isn't free, and the price paid for freedom is the sacrifice of our veterans, of our active military, and their families. Don't forget the families. When a man or a lady comes home from war and they've been injured, and they're wounded or they're emotionally damaged from the experience, they suffer, but also their family suffers. Each individual member of their family suffers. And it's our duty to take care of them as they put themselves in harm's way for us. It's our moral duty. And it's also a legal obligation by this government because it's part of the agreement that is made when someone signs up or enlists to the armed forces. So we've got to honor our obligations to these veterans, and we have to elevate them high in our esteem. And then we need to take action on their behalf where they may be unable to do so themselves.
All right. And again, Anna, what I've done is I've reposted this on my Facebook page, Rick Trader. You can click on it. You can listen to Doug's song, the John J. Pershing Veterans Home, as well as his other songs on here. And if there's anybody that we need to pay tribute to in this country, in my opinion, it is our veterans. I mean, my gosh, what more can I say other than that?
Well, I think we also, on Veterans Day, need to be mindful of the fact that there are future veterans out there in harm's way right now. And our government does not give them proper support, nor does it rely upon their expertise militarily to determine when they should and should not act, which often increases the risk of harm, not only to these men, but to the civilians they're out there trying to work with, in opposition to the threat, which is Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So I guess we have to be mindful of that, and perhaps in addition to paying verbal tribute and honoring these veterans, as is our duty and is certainly appropriate to do, we should go one step further and take some action on their behalf in honor of Veterans Day, whether it be to make a donation to a nonprofit organization that's supplementing what the government isn't getting done, or whether it's to make that email or that phone call you've been putting off about the situation at Veterans Affairs, especially with regard to medical care, or perhaps even the GI Bill in the studies. We've talked about it here on the show. I mean, we take some action.
Right.
Take some action in addition to paying tribute.
All right. And I want to say hello to Mary. Our good friend Mary Brockman is out there, as usual. Always great knowing that Mary's with us. But right now we are going to take a break. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and yours truly, Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC 1360 in Philly, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Punnet Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, AM FM 24/7, and Rebooting Liberty Radio Network. Anna and I will be right back with Christopher Horner from the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
You've heard Paul Dilts playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stockings. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show with Rick Trader and Anna Little. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com, or mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, log on to LeadingEdgeRadioNetwork.com, or 1 p.m., RoarRadio.net, and 6 p.m., ThePunditPress.com. Now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Our next guest is with us, and the honor of the introduction is mine. Christopher Horner serves as a senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. An attorney in Washington, D.C., Horner has represented CEI as well as scientists and members of the U.S. House and Senate on matters of environmental policy in the federal courts and in the Supreme Court. He has been a contributor in the Washington Times, National Review Online, and Washington Examiner opinion pages, a guest columnist for United Press International, and he has also written in the Investor's Business Daily's Opinion and the Wall Street Journal's Letters pages. Chris, welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thank you.
I am really excited to talk to you about this article that was written by Lachlan Marquez, which references actually Competitive Enterprise Institute's request for the NDA that Clinton signed. Now, we've all been talking about the possibility of that, but I guess we get to talk about the facts now that the Competitive Enterprise Institute has actually obtained the record. Talk to us about it.
Okay, well, just a quick backstory, because a lot of people have been looking for State Department records and seeking them, including Secretary Clinton's records. We had a very narrow purpose in mind, but to do so, given what we all know now about her practices, we had to establish some basic understanding. I wanted some documents that I now know exist because of this promiscuous practice we've found throughout this administration of using private email accounts. Not this homebrew server. This is unique, particularly for somebody who signed these non-disclosure agreements. We'll get into that. But private email accounts are just rife throughout this administration. I'm going through now. I went through 900 pages of documents produced yesterday from somebody who developed very major rules, extraordinarily costly, radical rules. And it turns out they were developed on a Yahoo account with environmentalist pressure groups. It makes the rules illegal. Okay, unlawful. And so we just filed a motion to stay those in court. But this is throughout every agency we've looked at. So there's a form you sign when you leave government in return for the benefits and your last check and so on, and it's a condition of your employment. You sign a form, and the first box you check is whether or not, in a separation form, whether or not you have copies of any work-related records on another email account, on a thumb drive, external hard drive, homebrew server in somebody's bathroom. I mean, you have to, that's the first box. So the first question I wanted to know was, did Secretary Clinton sign one? We know it was required by law. We know it was required to get her last check and any benefits and so on. And we learned through this lawsuit against the State Department that she did not. What we learned Thursday night in the production that led to this story, now 4 stories at the Free Beacon and several elsewhere I've seen, was State let her go. They gave her a last check. They even allow her to participate in a 401k, the Federal Thrift Savings Program, a taxpayer-subsidized 401k for the poor, dead broke former secretary. Even though she is not entitled to it because she refused to turn in this form in return for it, saying, I don't have any documents, or if I do, and therefore identifying them. That was the first big red flag. They let her, they agreed with her. She doesn't have to, she's a Clinton. So rules are for other people. Then we found out that these non-disclosure agreements were filed. Not only we got her federal thrift security form saying, yep, she took the benefits but refused to comply. We found these 2 non-disclosure agreements. No one else had obtained them. Even the Hill in the oversight had not obtained them, but they came in one of 3 productions we got Thursday night, pages 23, 24, and 26, 27, I think, of a larger production. There were these 2 documents signed by Mrs. Clinton on her first full day on the job, promising 2 things. One was for sensitive compartmented information. Essentially, it's in flux, it's migrated, but she understands that she has to respect that it's serious, cannot be handled recklessly, and there are criminal penalties. The more important document, as far as I can tell, was a classified information non-disclosure agreement. And it is, as has been reported, a contract between her and us, in which she says, and this is buried in the first sentence of the first paragraph, I recognize that information may be classified whether it's marked classified or not. I understand the gravity, criminal consequences that I subject myself to if I do not handle this properly, if I handle it recklessly, if I distribute it, if I provide others access to it, and so on. I understand the gravity, the severity, and the consequences. It's right there, promising, in essence, not to later run around the country saying, oh, no harm, no foul, nothing was marked classified when I sent it from my homebrew server. She is here signing 2 documents saying, I will never say that, because I recognize classified at birth. As everybody knew I had to. I had to understand it because I'd be dealing with and constructing messages, reflecting classified knowledge, and so on. I understand the concept of classified at birth. I promise not to later claim it wasn't a big deal because no one marked it classified before I sent it. She waived what is her new defense to the entire scandal right now in this document. She waived it on January 22nd, 2009, saying there's no such thing as saying it wasn't a big deal because it wasn't marked. It's a big deal because I am obligated to know whether something's classified when I see it. This is a very big development because, as you know, she said there is no, just like there is no relationship. She said there is no classified information. And then when that proved to be no longer operable, she changed it to nothing. There was nothing marked classified. Well, this document just blows that out of the water. She can't say it. She said it doesn't matter. She said, I recognize it doesn't have to be marked.
I'm relieved that you found this document, Chris, because, it sure seems like, look, I may not agree with Hillary Clinton's principles and her policies, but I don't think she's stupid. I think she's pretty smart. I take her to be a very intelligent, accomplished woman. So when she comes out and says, well, how was I supposed to know this was classified? My jaw drops. So I'm really relieved that you came up with the document that proves that she had to know at the time she signed it, which is when she started the job. So I don't think you forget after that, and she's being told. I think there's another comment, or maybe it is a quotation, in this article wherein it states that in one of the agreements, it states that she's responsible to consult with appropriate management authority to find out if things are classified. Did I understand that correctly?
Right. She had to learn about what makes something classified so that she makes the decision. And she has to consult. She agrees to training. She agrees she's been briefed. She agrees to stay current on this. She agrees to comply, to obey. And to follow up on something you said at first, this was just several weeks after she had set up a system very intentionally, yes, very deliberately. Right after she had very intentionally set up a system to make sure that she violated this on a serial, ongoing, regular basis. And then she walks in on her first day and signs both of these documents saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to handle this all properly, etc. Now, throughout other documents released Thursday night, there's all this back and forth between people saying her inner circle, the rarefied air, so her and her team, were making them all very nervous with their use of iPads and BlackBerries, which was not kosher. It was not safe. They were worried about raising it with them because, of course, they're imperious people, as you've noticed. They don't take to challenge very well. And you can see throughout this correspondence that we may have a good opportunity to raise this now. It's been going on for years by this point, and they're saying we're going to have to raise this issue.
Thank God, because if we can't get some honesty around this issue, I feel we're even dishonoring the dead in the Benghazi situation. I mean, we absolutely have got to get to the truth about this. Chris, we've got to go to a quick break. It's a 2-minute break. Can you hold on during that time?
Sure.
Thank you so very much. Listeners, we are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7. Those are all .coms. Rick Trader, Anna Little, and Christopher Horner will be right back with you after the break.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the Internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stockings. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360. 227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, where morning is at 9 a.m. Log on to Leading Edge Radio Network. At 1 p.m., log on to roarradio.net, or at 6 p.m., log on to thepunandpress.com. Our guest this segment is Christopher C. Horner. He serves as a senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Chris, thanks for holding through that break. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Chris, the non-disclosure agreement, if you or I violated it, if we are in position to violate it, what are the criminal penalties?
Well, each instance, I mean, there are numerous. There are, I think, 8 violations of the criminal code or criminal violations set forth in the agreement that she recognizes. But there are more throughout the Title 18, the criminal code. In fact, I'll tell you something. The day after this news about her crimes,
right?
They're on their face crimes. I mean, whether DOJ decides she's too big to go after and so on is another story. But they're on their face crimes. Each one is a felony. Each one is from 3 to 10 years per. Now, that doesn't happen, and it particularly doesn't happen if you're of a certain class, but those are crimes on their face. The question is whether she's prosecuted. The day after this news broke this spring, we lost a case. The opinion was issued in a case, and I just have to read the court's opinion the following way. Because, as I pointed out, we have found them using private email accounts. Even the president's science advisor, the guy who discussed the notion, wanted to have the conversation about sterilizing the population through the drinking water supply. John Holdren, his very, very far left science advisor. It turns out he was using several private email accounts for work-related emails we found through litigation, including an environmental pressure group server. So he's performing White House correspondence, some of which he chooses to write off of where it's subject to scrutiny, in the possession of a green pressure group. Well, we sue and we lose. And this court ran contrary to precedent, so we're on appeal right now. But the court issued its opinion the day after this news broke, and I just have to think the court saw the news. Because the judge put a footnote in there and said something you never say to a judge, and you rarely hear judges say. And she said, while not relevant here. Never say that to a judge, okay? Mm-hmm. And in this case, she said, well, not relevant here. If the emails on a private account had some special significance, for example, containing classified information, then they would be unlawfully removed. Unlawfully removed is code for Title 18, Section 2071. That it's a felony. Mm-hmm. And the court put this in an opinion published the day after this broke. I have to think they rushed this footnote in there saying it's a felony to do what's in the news right now. And it is. And the question is whether there's prosecution, and I think this revelation at least makes it more uncomfortable for a highly politicized DOJ to just say, there really wasn't anything here, because we now have 2 contracts signed by the First Lady, mm-hmm. signed weeks after having set up the server to violate this contract on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And in which she says, I recognize the penalties, I recognize the severity, I recognize that I'm responsible for determining if something's classified or not. So, and by the way, one other point I wanted to mention, these emails say that we obtained the secretary doesn't use computer systems. There was a lie going around that, the reason she didn't have a desktop is her aides put out the word, she doesn't use computers.
Well, Chris, in a sense, didn't she also implicate Bill Clinton when asked about this? Because didn't she make a statement saying, I didn't do anything different than what Bill did?
I don't recall that, but I do know that in the last days of the Clinton administration, we had, for example, the EPA chief, Carol Browner, mm-hmm. reformat her hard drive, and they found it, and it had been wiped clean. And she, too, had said, very high-ranking official, presidential access and so on, Al Gore's person in their administration, she had said, I don't use computers anyway, it's just for my son's video games and things, and so sure. I was doing the Bush administration a favor. This seems to be going around. Well, I don't use computers.
This administration, there seems to be a lot of, I would call it, email violations or fraud. It seems like it's rampant in this administration, all the way from what Hillary Clinton has done to Lois Lerner to Lisa Jackson. It seems like it must be in their playbook.
Right, and I found the Richard Windsor, the false identity of Lisa Jackson. Found a lot of private emails, a couple I've mentioned, were in court on others, found they've moved to text messaging and are having all of them destroyed. They're moving over to EPA has a particular system for instant messaging that they're not preserving. So they've set up various, and they even have a PowerPoint that you can find online. I cited in my book, The Liberal War on Transparency, which is a how-to manual on FOIAing and an expose of what they're doing. They even have a PowerPoint up online explaining to EPA staff that they need to have their friends in outside groups set up Yahoo and other chat rooms so that the documents are never in their control.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really rampant. When they meant transparent, they meant they'll get all the Bush stuff out if you want it overnight, but no, not theirs. They've got ways around that.
Unbelievable, Chris. I've been listening to you and Rick discuss this, and the thought crosses my mind. If it were anyone on the right, and by right I mean the political right, this would not only be investigated much more quickly, but I think the charges and the allegations of criminal misconduct would have been formalized almost immediately. So,
well, I do want to recall, you remember during impeachment, they said, it's just about sex. People don't get prosecuted for lying about sex. Until we pointed out, yeah, they do.
Oh,
well,
my goodness.
They meant other people. Other people do, sure, but not our people. Well, they do get prosecuted for that, and we know, for example, with General Petraeus and others, that numerous people are prosecuted if they run afoul of the administration, if they're not protected by a politicized DOJ, if they're in the crosshairs of a politicized DOJ. They do get prosecuted for much less than we see. So, yes, I suspect you're probably right. The thing is...
Yeah, and I think that what gives credence to it is we have a New Jersey federal senator here, Robert Menendez, whose misconduct was not addressed, and I still believe it's misconduct. They'll say it's alleged. I think it's misconduct. And I'm talking about his dealings with underage prostitutes outside U.S. borders. That kind of behavior is certainly morally reprehensible, but I think it was also misconduct on the part of a U.S. senator, and it was not prosecuted until he spoke out against the Obama policy when it came to Netanyahu and Israel. And then they decided they were going to prosecute him. But then when he got back in line, suddenly we don't hear about it anymore. And, he's going to fight it, and he's going to win, and there's no more discussion of it. I'm very troubled, Chris, by all of this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think that's certainly how it appears. And I'll tell you a story about another case we had, and it may support what you're saying. You know about James Hansen. He was the astronomer at NASA who was hailed as the world's leading climate scientist because during the Bush administration, he just turned up his alarmism and activism to 11. He used his position as an astronomer at NASA to become a political activist. And we learned a very, very highly compensated one, hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on top of his $180,000 taxpayer salary. Well, we asked for certain records, and the administration protected him. They fought in court with specious arguments, release of his required filings, okay? And then he got himself chained to the White House fence with Daryl Hannah protesting Obama and Keystone XL. And I got a call from the assistant U.S. attorney handling the case saying, where would you like the documents messengered? He was no longer Bush's problem. He was Obama's problem. And they fought us in court until he got arrested, and he was their problem. They said, where would you like them messengered?
Oh, boy. Well, we've got to do something about this, and I guess the best thing our listeners can do, Chris, is to plug in with you. Remind our listeners where they can follow your work.
CEI.org is a good place to start.
Hey, Chris, before we let you go, we got to make this quick. What is the statute of limitations on this?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I imagine that it's quite long in at least the Espionage Act. There's a couple of national security, not just Title 18, but a couple of other provisions that are cited in that form that I suspect have a longer than usual statute. So I don't imagine it's like murder where there isn't one that runs out, but I don't think it's... if the question is going toward would a Republican DOJ prosecute her, no, I think they'd come in and say, you know what, we're not going to stir up any political hornet's nest in our first 100 days. Now it's our first year. Well, the midterm elections are coming up, and it would always be, she's going to get a pass as she expected, because if I failed to mention, she's a Clinton. I suppose that's it. We do have, unfortunately, different rules for different sets of people, including whether or not you run afoul of the administration.
All right. Christopher Horner, Senior Fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Take care. God bless. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, WNJC in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, AM/FM 24/7, and of course, rebooting Liberty Radio Network. Anna and I will be right back with our next guest right after this.
They say I'm nasty, but
You've heard Paul Dilks playing the music on the Your Music Matters morning show. He is also an experienced mortgage loan officer working for U.S. Mortgage Corporation and assists homeowners navigate the reverse mortgage process. If you are finding yourself asking questions whether or not you set aside enough for retirement, Paul can sit down with you, your family, and your financial advisor and discuss how a reverse mortgage may be a valuable resource for your retirement plan. You will be responsible for paying your taxes and insurance, and the reverse mortgage can help with this and other expenses, such as home health care or other untimely bills. Put Paul's 20-plus years of experience to work for you, as choosing the right option for your situation can be critical. Call Paul at U.S. Mortgage Corporation at 877-213-9977. That's 877-213-9977. Or go to seniormatters.info for more information. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is a licensed mortgage banker in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and an equal housing lender. NMLS number 3901. U.S. Mortgage Corporation is located at 201 Old Country Road, Suite 140, Melville, New York, 11747. This advertisement applies to first lien mortgages. Paul E. Dilks, NMLS is 485904.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. where even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stocking. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show with Rick Trader and Anna Little. If you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRS Network and CCRShow.com. For mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, log on to Leading Edge Radio Network, 1 p.m. RoarRadio.net, and 6 p.m. ThePunditPress.com. And now you can listen to Conservative Commandos from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Our next guest is with us. The honor of the introduction is mine. Doug Sackleben joined the Club for Growth in 2015 after working on Capitol Hill for several members of Congress. He has also worked in radio broadcasting, having covered Congress for the Salem Radio Network. Doug graduated with a BA in Communications from Temple University and a master's degree in Public Policy from Liberty University. Doug, welcome back to Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thanks, Anna. Glad to be on with you.
Well, we're glad you're here, and I'm so glad that we're going to talk about this article entitled GOP Debate, It's Still the Economy, Stupid. I need to hear about our economy. Thanks to David McIntosh for the article, and thanks for you, Doug, for coming here to talk about it.
Well, this is what we've been throughout these debates. They've been interesting debates. They've been controversial debates. They've been sort of moderator-dominated debates at times. But from the Club for Growth perspective, we've been saying since day one, we really want to hear where these candidates are on the basic pocketbook issues, taxes, spending, regulation, entitlements, all those issues that hit us in one way or another and affect the economy and growth and those sorts of issues.
Well, there's a Gallup poll out that's talking about how Americans feel about the economy, and guess what it says in the article is that Americans' confidence in the economy remains down. Would you like to speak to that?
Well, and that's certainly what you see as the consequence, and you know this. I'm sure you're all talking about it every day. I mean, it's the consequence of 7 years of terrible economic policies coming out of Washington. When you continue to build this government and expand its regulatory footprint the way you do, and it hammers small businesses, when taxes stay where they are and the government keeps taking up a larger and larger portion of our overall GDP, when the government is such a massive part of it and our debt is what it is, then all of that still has a drag on the economy and still affects people who are out, working class Americans who are looking for good paying jobs.
But I thought that Obama said that we are in recovery. I mean, I don't see it on the ground where I live, but why would he say we're in recovery when you and I can't see it? And it's probably not true. Why would he say that?
Yeah, you, I, our listeners, the folks who are dealing with customers in service industries, I think sometimes he's really in touch maybe with some of the tech industry folks, the Silicon Valley folks, and the tech industry kind of booms along, and he's buddies with a lot of them, and life is good. But for those in the service industry, for those in small businesses, it's a constant struggle, both for them to maintain, to try to get to where they were prior to the economic downturn. And when it's a struggle for those business owners, then it's going to be a struggle for what they buy from others. And it just becomes this recurring cycle. And we continue to see that there's nothing that this president has done to really stimulate that kind of broad sort of economic growth.
Well, thank you for returning me to focus on my sanity here, because I have been listening to what this administration is saying, and I've been trying to figure out how they feel comfortable getting up to say that when what I'm seeing on the street is the exact opposite. So you're making me feel better, Doug. But I'd like to talk about this GOP debate. It's tonight, right? So there are some questions that I think you'd like to have addressed. So why don't you talk to us about those?
I think the one that we really, there's several, but one maybe that's sort of near the top of the list that gets a little sort of piecemeal attention here and there in these debates, but never any kind of consistency. It comes back to the mandatory spending. Our federal government, 2/3 of the spending at least, is on this automatic pilot glide path toward entitlements, and everyone's afraid to touch it for the most part. And so we continue to see this debt grow past $18 trillion with no real end in sight. There's been some movement on the discretionary spending. And you go back, Anna, to what you were saying earlier, the things this president says when he stands in front of a camera and says how the debt is coming down, or the deficits, we're reducing the deficits. Well, we're adding less debt this year than we did last year, but we're still adding debt. I mean, it's just a bizarre sort of Washington-only kind of spin on things to say that this is really good because we're, only adding, not quite the 1 or 2 trillion, but maybe it'll be 600 million. But we're still adding debt. And where it's happening more than anywhere is in this mandatory spending, and no one seems willing to take it on. And I guess that's one of the things we'd love to hear these candidates talk about specifically. What kind of things do they do to preserve for those who, expect that system still because they're older, they have seen money taken out of their paychecks. But how do you start to make changes, structural changes, so that these entitlements not only survive but don't drag down the budget in the way that they are?
Well, there's at least 3 of them that I think can speak to that from some experience, and that's Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and Marco Rubio. So I'm excited to hear from them. And we've got to take a quick 2-minute break. I hope you'll hold on, because we've got to speak to the rest of these candidates. I know that there are some specific questions that you've laid out that might help start to flush this out. Can you hold on for just 2 minutes?
Absolutely. Sure can, Anna.
Thank you so very much. Listeners, we are coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the Internet with CPR Worldwide Media, Leading Edge Radio Network, TalkStream Live, The Pundit Press, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, Roar Radio, Rebooting Liberty Radio Network, and AM/FM 24/7. They are all .com. Rick Trader, Anna Little, and Doug Suckliban will be right back with you after the break.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Biden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
This holiday season, help Soldiers for Stockings improve the morale and welfare of members of our armed forces deployed overseas. Now through November 20th, there is so much work to be done, and you can help in many ways. Download the stocking pattern from stockingsforsoldiers.org and start sewing today. Volunteer to help decorate and assemble stockings. Donate Christmas candies, snacks, nuts, chips, drink mixes, DVDs, books, magazines, lip balm, toiletries, and other items needed to fill the stocking. Or help make packets of snowman soup, hot chocolate, to send along with the stockings. For more information, patterns, and a list of items needed, visit stockingsforsoldiers.org. This holiday season, help send our troops a touch of home. For many, it's all they will receive. All stockings need to be completed by November 20th. So get started today at stockingsforsoldiers.org. That's stockingsforsoldiers.org. Stockings for Soldiers, sending stockings filled with joy to our soldiers in harm's way for the 9th consecutive year.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Anna Little and Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts, please check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com. We're mornings at 9 a.m. Log on to Leading Edge Radio Network at 1 p.m., roarradio.net, or 6 p.m., thepunandpress.com. You can also hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Our guest this segment is Doug Sackleben. He's from the Club for Growth. And Doug, thanks for holding through that break. We appreciate your time.
Happy to, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
Well, Doug, I got to chastise you a little bit. It's global warming, it's climate change, it's gay marriage, it's unisex bathrooms, it's Black Lives Matter. I mean, what's all this talk about the economy?
You know, isn't it remarkable?
Isn't it remarkable?
Backseat. Yeah, that we've seen the economy take when for the last, since this president stepped into office, we've been waiting for this much vaunted recovery to come about, and we're not seeing the signs of it. And yet, isn't that, I think we see from this administration the sort of shiny object mentality of look over here and be distracted by this and watch this issue. But not get back to the fundamental pocketbook issues and wallet issues that most of us are facing.
You know, Doug, what I found it was very interesting during the debates, at least the debates on CNN and CNBC, I must get all these alphabets mixed up in my brain, was the lack of question, the real substance questions, like the economy, but instead they ask stupid questions like, what do you want your nickname to be if you're elected president? I mean...
Yep. And that's been, and sometimes what's even more fascinating to me is that not only will they ask, like you said, those kind of inane questions, but then sort of follow up on them and push for personal interaction and debate, to try to raise the intensity level of the personal interaction, but not push on, where you stand on tax reform and how this will work and what regulations will you go after and what departments will you get rid of or drastically reduce. And that's the kind of issue where if I do want to see a moderator step in there and be a little bit more forceful and say, well, let's be specific. How will you do that? That's where we want to hear it, as on those kind of issues. When you come to Washington, what will you actually do that will turn the tide to reduce the debt, not just sort of taper it down, but get us back towards budgets that actually get to balance?
Doug, one more comment before I hand it back to Ann a little. You see, if you were a candidate, and if you were up there at the debates, you know what they would ask you about? They would ask you about those Temple Owls.
Well, and that'd be the kind of thing I'd be happy to talk about if I didn't want to have to talk about policy. I'd cheer about those Temple Owls.
All right.
I'm pretty excited about them.
Anna, back to you.
Thanks, Rick. Well, Doug, we've got this list of questions that David worked hard to put together, and I know that the Club for Growth in general would like to have answered. One of them is one that you would direct to all the candidates, and that's what are two specific pro-growth policies that you will seek to enact within your first 100 days in office? And actually, David says in his article that Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and Marco Rubio could use a question like that as a real opportunity to shine. Obviously, the situation is 180 degrees different where it comes to Mr. Trump. And we really don't know where Dr. Carson would be. Mr. Huckabee, we would think, should be pro-growth, but he hasn't had an opportunity to talk about it much. I don't know much myself about Governor Kasich. What are your thoughts about this?
It is. It's a hard question because we've seen, and what we've done is looked at the records of these individuals and where they've gone in the past, and the governor there in New Jersey, Governor Christie, and Governor Kasich. We've seen the Medicaid expansion that really poses a long-running problem for the future for the residents and the taxpayers there. Governor Huckabee had some issues with some extensive tax increases in Arkansas that he's explained away to some, at least he's given an explanation that he didn't really have much choice, but it was a net tax hike of a little over $500 million. We've heard from Ben Carson some things that we like, and yet then you get into health care, and he talks about a catastrophic health care program that's run by the government and managed sort of on the model of FEMA, Emergency Management Agency, that really doesn't have that fabulous of a track record. And you in New Jersey, I think, can probably attest to that in some point.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's just a role for government that we sort of cringe at. And he talks about limiting private health insurance companies for profit health insurance companies. And Trump has some serious tax increase proposals in the past that he's never really quite renounced, and still talks about government health care that the government should pay for in an extensive way. And so there's some serious questions that these candidates need to address.
Well, I'd like to turn it to Governor Christie for a moment. I like the question that's listed here. After 5 years in office, New Jersey is still rated the worst business tax climate in the country. Why have you not been able to significantly improve the business tax climate in the Garden State? Now, I don't know what Governor Christie is going to say to such a question if he's asked, but I can let you know that we have had a terrible time here in the state of New Jersey where I live trying to gain any seats in our legislature. As a matter of fact, this last election cycle, we lost 4 Republican incumbencies. So I don't know what he's going to answer, but I would say that has something to do with it. But what are your thoughts about governors who need to work as conservatives with a liberal-led legislature? How do you judge them?
It's interesting, and you have much more hands-on experience than this. I still get back. I grew up in Clifton up in northern New Jersey, and I still get back there from time to time, and to my old barber there who says to me, why didn't Governor Christie, when he was out campaigning for governors, why didn't he do more to get Republicans in the legislature here so that he could get what he needs? Now, I don't know. I didn't follow his campaigning there in New Jersey, but there's only so far that goes when you're as persuasive a figure as Christie and you got the kind of mandate you did in that last election. There's only so many times you can say, my hands were tied. It was all Democrats and I just couldn't get anything done.
I like that. It's accountability that matters. And if you're going to hug Obama on the bridge in the town where one of your congressional candidates lives, you're not helping her win the election. And I'm sorry, I threw something personal in. But, I do have respect for Governor Christie. I just think when he does exit the governor's position, and he will have to do that by law at the end of this term, regardless of whether he runs the full race for presidency or not, and we've got a difficulty finding someone like Governor Christie to put in that position, and we've just lost 4 seats on the legislature. So it is a problem.
Well, Doug and Anna, Christie's never had any coattails. Okay, during his first election, he brought with him one Republican. His second election, he lost that Republican. And as you said, Anna, in the last election, they lost 4 seats. Christie's never had any coattails. And one of the reasons I feel, Anna and Doug, is he's never really worked for other Republicans in the state.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from Garden Staters, and that's the concern. And listen, we all would acknowledge Chris Christie would be a better president than the one we have right now in the White House.
Absolutely, and he's a far cry better as governor than John Corzine, who is extremely the opposite just prior to him. So, we have to give him credit, but I am frustrated with what happens when he's gone.
Right, and the thing I think we have to keep remembering is we've got still a great field of candidates. There are Senator Cruz and Senator Rubio. People may have their differences on some of the immigration issues. We don't. That's not an issue for us. But these guys and frankly Senator Paul have put forth some great proposals and walked the talk on these economic issues. And so there are all of these candidates would be markedly better than Barack Obama. But there's even really good ones in this field that people need to continue to give a look to and hear their plans for what they want to do.
And what do you think about the fact that Cruz, Paul, and Rubio are all senators? I don't think any of them have executive experience. Does that matter to you?
We don't. The Club for Growth does not. We're not measuring that issue per se. We're looking at where have they stood ideologically. Have they been consistent on that, and are they willing to still fight for it? And frankly, these are, particularly in the case of Senator Cruz, guys who've really taken a beating for the stands that they've taken sometimes here in Washington. And I think that you got to give some credit there. I mean, we were fans as well of Governor Walker, who just never seemed to get life in this campaign because it felt like there was a good state executive who had good policies but couldn't ever quite get that message across. I think at this point a strong fighter who has good policies would do a wonder down here.
Well, that's a great way to leave the segment. Time flies when we're having fun. So, Doug, please remind our listeners where they can follow you and this issue and perhaps pick your reactions up after the debate.
Absolutely. We'd love for people to visit our website. It's clubforgrowth.org, clubforgrowth.org, and they can follow us at Twitter. Just stick the number 4 in there instead of the word 4, so Club for Growth with the number 4 in there, and they can follow our tweeting throughout the debate tonight.
Thank you so much for joining us, Doug. It's been a pleasure to discuss this, and now I'm revved up and ready to watch the GOP debate tonight. Thank you so much.
And Rick, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Well, Anna, we are coming to the end of the show. I want to thank you for sitting in today as my co-host. I also want to thank our guests, Mr. John Forsyth Jr. for working the boards. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
WNJC, Washington Township, Philadelphia. Philadelphia's Renaissance radio station. Brought to you from Forsyth Broadcasting. Or listen to us at WNJCradio.com.
The leader in talk radio on the internet. Right here on K98Talk.com.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.